no one in Detroit wants to answer. Why does so many Chinese cars look more advanced than the cars we're buying here? You watch a few videos online and the differences are hard to ignore. The software is smoother, the cabins feel more upscale, the driver assistance is more refined, and the technology often seems a generation ahead. Cars from brands like BYD, JXPeng, and others, they sell overseas for prices that would make American compact crossover window stickers look like a typo. Now, we watch these videos and you do the quick mental math on currency conversion and ask the same question that keeps coming up. Why in the world can't we buy these cars here? Before we break this down, I want to remind you to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications because you don't want to miss anything. There is a lot of massive information coming out and we want to make sure you're aware of it. This week, the Senate Commerce Committee gave their official answer. On July 15, they took up the Connected Vehicle Security Act of 2026, bipartisan legislation introduced by Ohio Republican Senator Bernie Moreno and Michigan Democrat Senator Elisa Slotkin. The bill would permanently codify and strengthen the earlier Commerce Department rule banning connected cars and the specific software and hardware tied to China and other designated foreign adversaries. It's not limited to finished cars wearing a Chinese badge. It goes straight after the telematics control units, the cellular modems, the GPS modules, the actual nervous system that lets a modern car consistently phone home to China with your data. Supporters from the UAW all the way to major automakers and aftermarket groups lined up to cheer it as essentially national security protection. And to be fair, the security argument exists on paper. But when the Washington solution, as they call it in quotes, dangerous foreign technology in your car, turns out to be making absolutely certain that American families keep paying full domestic prices for the version that's already here. You start to wonder whether the real threat they're most worried about is foreign spies or domestic competition finally showing up and forcing some actual price discipline. The official case is straightforward. Chinese national intelligence law requires companies operating in China to assist the government when asked. A connected car is basically a mobile sensor platform with wheels. It knows where you are at all times, how you drive, when you brake hard, how often you use the wipers, and increasingly what's happening inside the cabin. Yes, everything you talk about is being listened to through cameras and microphones tied to driver monitoring and infotainment systems. And we have covered this multiple times before. But that capability sitting in the hands of a government that can legally demand that data is a legitimate technical concern. And nobody serious is pretending that the risk is imaginary. The risk is real. What gets interesting and more than a little convenient is how the bill is actually written. Tariffs north of 100% on Chinese EVs had already made finished Chinese brand vehicles effectively unsaleable at scale in the US. This legislation goes after the side doors and backdoor workarounds that every single country uses to get their product in our country. It targets vehicles that might be designed in China but assembled in Mexico or Canada. Joint venture products carrying Chinese connectivity systems or anything that tries to route around the critical China part through third countries. Chinese automakers have spent years quietly building plants in Mexico precisely because finished vehicle tariffs are brutal and Congress just made it clear they're counting the nervous system of the car as well. So this is going to make it more challenging for them. The bill also makes the policy permanent by turning an agency rule into a statute. Agency rules can be narrowed, paused, or reversed, but the next administration or Commerce Secretary won't be able to do that. A law requires another act of Congress to make that change, and they're going to make sure it doesn't happen. They wanted this locked in no matter who sits in the White House later because apparently the threat is so existential that we can't risk future politicians ever having second thoughts. Even with finished vehicles blocked at the border, American production still leans heavily on Chinese processed battery minerals and components and sub-assemblies. We're trying to make that change. We're banning the completed car while continuing to rely on the very supply chains that power the batteries underneath it, whether it's an electric vehicle or not. The contradiction is so glaring, it's almost impressive. They expect the public not to notice. But we're noticing this. Stop being a pure China bad story. The moment you realize every single modern vehicle, regardless of where it's built, is already a rolling data collection machine. We have covered this over and over again, but there's more to this story. The real question isn't whether Beijing should have access to your driving habits. The real question is why the government only seems to lose your minds when the company has the Made in China on the badge. This episode is brought to you by Incon. We've all heard about scams and identity theft, but what can you do to protect ourselves and our families? These people are sneaky and they know how to trick even the smartest person. Now, we all have digital footprints, but how do we block all those data brokers and spam emails, and especially get off the dark web? Well, I found a way to make it happen. Incognito data from multiple sites, including online directories, people search sites, and even commercial databases. The process is fully automated for hundreds of known data brokers and companies that collect and sell your data without your consent. Data can reappear on these sites. So, Incon repeatedly removes it for you. That means lower exposure to identity theft and cybercrime. Fewer spam calls, robocalls, and scam attempts, less personal details online, and reduced financial risks. And some Incon plans offer custom removals, which cover other data brokers not included in the automated removal process, like news portals, sports publications, health apps, and more. You can save 60% off by signing up with my special link and code in the description. Take your personal data back with Incon. Use code CARC at the link below and get 60% off an annual plan. Incon.com/car. That's ncni.com/cincon.com/car. Many of us are aware that modern connected cars generate enormous amounts of data. They track precise GPS location and routes, driver behavior, including speed, acceleration, braking patterns, and cornering forces. They also monitor vehicle health. That means tire pressure, battery state of charge, oil life, fault codes, and your infotainment systems. Log what you search for and what you listen to, your call history, and your Bluetooth pairings. We keep covering this, but you need to be aware this data is being collected. You need to be aware that they have information on you in a full digital footprint. Driver monitoring cameras and microphones tied to advanced driver assistance capture cabin video, fatigue detection, and even biometric signals in some systems. All of that can flow back to the manufacturer through cellular connections and automatic downloads, which includes uploads of all of your information. Right now in the United States, there is no comprehensive federal privacy law that specifically governs vehicle-generated data the way Europe's GDPR does. We have a patchwork of these state laws. California's CCPA and its updates give consumers some rights around personal information, and a handful of other states have followed with their own privacy statutes, but nothing at the federal level creates a clear nationwide baseline for what automakers can collect from your car, how long they can keep it, and who they can sell it to, or what consent actually looks like. Automakers' own privacy policies are often dense legal documents that most drivers never read. As I always say, what the big print giveth, the small print taketh away, and no one ever reads all the little fine print because it'd probably be a heck of a long read like War and Peace. Data routinely flows to manufacturers for diagnostics and over-the-ear updates. It flows to the insurance companies when drivers opt into the US age-based programs that promise discounts they rarely get, but track every hard brake and late-night drive. It gets packaged and sold through third-party data brokers. And the Federal Trade Commission has started paying more attention to these practices, but enforcement remains limited in a case-by-case basis. Meanwhile, two serious pieces of federal legislation have been introduced to actually give vehicle owners some control. The Driver Act, which would require manufacturers to give owners full access to all data generated by their own vehicles. I like that. And the ADPA Act, which would prohibit manufacturers from accessing or selling certain vehicle data without explicit owner consent, and would limit what can be collected in the first place. Both aim to treat vehicle data more like property that belongs to the owner rather than a free resource for the manufacturers and data markets. When the final version is written, we'll definitely be covering that, but we're far from a final look at what this law is going to look like. Congress has shown real urgency about keeping the data pipeline out of the hands of foreign adversaries. The same urgency has been almost entirely absent when the pipeline stays domestic. And that's why these make sense. That's the bigger pattern. Vehicles have become software-defined products. Whoever controls the code and constant cloud connection increasingly controls the ownership experience. What features work, how repairs happen, who can repair them. That's right, to repair. And whether certain capabilities can be enabled or disabled remotely, and what information leaves the car every single day. Blocking one source of that control while leaving the domestic version wide open doesn't just protect security, it protects the existing relationships and data arrangements that are already in place. And it does so while we continue relying on Chinese capacity for batteries and electronics that make the same vehicles run. The selective outrage is hard to miss once you start connecting the dots. Follow the money and the patriotic framing starts looking a little more like standard industry self-P protection. American automakers have spent more than a decade deliberately shifting their lineups away from lower-margin sedans, those low-entry vehicles, toward trucks, SUVs, and larger crossovers that cost more. That's because they have a significantly higher profit. More goodies on the car, the more expensive it costs, more profit they make. Introducing real price competition from vehicles that can be built profitably at substantially lower prices from China would force actual decreased prices across the board here in the US. And that's exactly what competition is supposed to do. It's also exactly what companies with comfortable pricing power would prefer to avoid. Now, that makes sense because the UAW has been vocal in its support. Higher-wage domestic assembly and supplier jobs look a lot more secure when the low-cost high-tech alternative is kept on the far side of tariffs. And now this permanent ban on connected vehicles is a plus for the UAW. Aftermarket groups also back the legislation because familiar supply channels for telematics and connectivity hardware are easy to navigate than opening the door to new global partners. Obviously, they're protecting their businesses. Now drivers get the other side of that equation. Without additional downward pressure on pricing, new vehicle transaction prices stay elevated. And right now, the average new vehicle transaction price sits near $50,000. You may never have planned to buy a Chinese brand. But the existence of credible lower-price technology-loaded alternatives forces every other manufacturer to justify their numbers or improve their value. It's too early to know if these vehicles are reliable or will last equal time to the ones we get now. The Chinese brands are out there, the prices are lower, and this is of interest to consumers. Remove that pressure and the justifications get a whole lot easier to deliver and a whole lot more expensive for those people actually writing the checks. You should care because this shows up in your wallet every single time you walk into a dealership and again every month when the insurance bill arrives. Prices have remained stubbornly high even as some supply chain pressures have eased. Insurance costs keep climbing partly because vehicles are more expensive to repair and partly because the data collection programs are feeding more driving data into rating models. And when policy decisions deliberately limit competition, those elevated prices stop looking like temporary market conditions and start looking like a structural feature. This is another reason all this data is being collected, so you pay higher rates. Your next vehicle will still collect and transmit data no matter who builds it. Your next vehicle will still collect and transmit data no matter who builds it. This bill does nothing to change how American manufacturers or insurers can access and monetize that information. It only draws a formal line at certain foreign governments getting the same access. If the actual concern is sensitive personal data, leaving the vehicle, location history that could reveal where you live, work, or worship, driving patterns that could be used for insurance, or even law enforcement purposes, then stopping at a country of origin that feels incomplete. Longer-term, sustained, higher prices and narrower choice affect who can afford newer, safer, and more efficient vehicles and how quickly the overall fleet turns over. The families feeling it first are the same ones that already are stretching to replace aged cars. They're also the ones whose data continues flowing through domestic channels without the same level of political scrutiny being applied to foreign ones. The most useful thing we can push for is the same level of transparency and consent on domestic data collection that we're suddenly very serious about when foreign adversaries are involved. The Driver Act and the ADPA Act deserve real attention because they shift the focus from where the car was built to who actually owns and controls the information coming out of it. And we know that answer should be you. Supporting these efforts or at least demanding hearings and movement on them is one concrete way to address the data side of this equation without pretending higher prices are an unavoidable side effect of security. Contact your senators, especially those on the Commerce Committee. Ask them directly, how will this bill balance legitimate national security concerns against higher prices for American families and continued reliance on various supply chains we claim to be worried about? National security matters, and so does the cost that goes along with it. Why are we footing the bill? Why are they taking our data? This is a real concern. In the meantime, do the homework on total cost of ownership across every option that's actually available. Look at real-world efficiency, insurance data sharing requirements, repairability, and whether the manufacturer makes diagnostics and parts accessible or locks you out of proprietary systems. Vehicles that treat your data as their ongoing revenue stream carry hidden costs that show up later. And it's also a major income stream to every car manufacturer. Here's the bigger question that keeps getting sidestepped. We're being told this permanent ban on Chinese connected technology is necessary to protect American roads, American jobs, and American data from foreign threats. Fine. But at what point do we admit that one of the primary things being protected is the ability of existing manufacturers and organized labor to maintain comfortable margins and limited competition? While American families keep absorbing the difference every time they shop for a vehicle, we pay for all this additional technology that only benefits car brands. That's the conversation worth forcing before we have no say. Because if the real goal is to secure vehicles in a genuinely strong domestic industry, we ought to be able to manage that without pretending higher prices and reduced choice for consumers are just an unfortunate coincidence that nobody in Washington saw coming. I'm sure you have some thoughts. Put them in the comments below. Here's a question that echoes through the streets of Detroit. Why do so many Chinese cars appear more advanced than those available here? After watching a few videos online, the differences become apparent. Their software runs smoother, their interiors feel more luxurious, and their driver assistance systems seem significantly better. Brands like BYD and JXPeng sell their vehicles overseas for prices that make American compact crossovers look like a mistake. As you watch these comparisons, you might do the quick mental math on currency conversions and keep asking, why can't we have these cars? Before diving into this topic, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We have a wealth of information coming your way. This week, the Senate Commerce Committee provided some clarity. On July 15, they revisited the Connected Vehicle Security Act of 2026, which was introduced by Ohio Republican Senator Bernie Moreno and Michigan Democrat Senator Elisa Slotkin. This legislation aims to cement and enhance a previous Commerce Department rule banning connected cars linked to China and other adversarial nations. It doesn't stop at just finished cars. It also targets telematics control units, cellular modems, GPS systems, essentially the nervous system that keeps a modern car in touch with China, sharing data. Various groups, including the UAW and automakers, voiced their support, framing it as a national security measure. While that security argument sounds valid, it also raises questions. The Washington solution seems to ensure American families continue paying full prices for vehicles already available domestically. This begs the question: is the government more concerned about foreign spies than about domestic competition? The case against these cars is simple. Under Chinese national intelligence laws, companies must assist the government with any requests. Connected cars act like mobile sensor platforms. They monitor your location, driving style, braking habits, and even what happens inside your cabin. Yes, conversations can be captured through cameras and microphones linked to monitoring systems. We've discussed this before, and while the risk is real, it's essential to consider how the bill is framed. Tariffs over 100% on Chinese electric vehicles have already made it nearly impossible for these brands to penetrate the US market. This legislation seeks to address alternative entry points used by other countries. It goes after vehicles designed in China but assembled in neighboring countries. It targets joint ventures that involve Chinese connectivity components or products attempting to circumvent these restrictions. Chinese automakers have strategically opened plants in Mexico, but this new bill complicates their efforts. By transitioning from an agency rule to a federal statute, the legislation solidifies these bans. Laws can't be easily adjusted, unlike rules. Changing it would require further congressional action, ensuring that these limits remain in place regardless of who occupies the Oval Office. While finished vehicles face blockades, American manufacturers still rely heavily on processed Chinese battery materials and components. We're in a paradox. We ban completed vehicles while depending on the supply chains fueling them. This contradiction is striking, yet there's an expectation that the public will overlook it. The issue isn't black and white. Every modern vehicle operates as a data collection machine. The more you recognize this, the clearer the narrative becomes. Why does the government seem more agitated about data from cars labeled, "Made in China"? Now, let's take a moment to talk about something important, incon. We often hear about scams and identity theft, but how can we shield ourselves and our families? These threats can be surprisingly sneaky, and it doesn't take much to fall victim, even for the sharpest among us. Every one of us has a digital footprint. It's crucial to know how to block pesky data brokers, spam emails, and even extricate ourselves from the dark web. Fortunately, Incon offers a solution. This platform gathers data from various sites, including online directories and commercial databases. Their automated process removes information from hundreds of data brokers who sell your information without consent. Incon continues to monitor these sites, so your information doesn't resurface, reducing your identity theft risk. Many service plans even offer custom removals for other data brokers not covered by standard automated processes. You can experience significant savings by signing up using my special link and code in the description. It's time to reclaim your personal data with Incon. Use code CARC for a discount on an annual plan. Back to cars, many modern connected vehicles create vast amounts of data. They track GPS locations, routes, driving behaviors, and even vehicle health, including battery life and fault codes. Yes, they log your search history and call history, along with other aspects of your driving experience. It's crucial to stay informed about this continuous data collection. Driver monitoring systems capture cabin activity, fatigue signals, and sometimes even biometric data. This information can easily flow back to manufacturers through wireless connections. In contrast, the United States lacks a comprehensive federal law governing vehicle-generated data, unlike Europe's GDPR. Instead, we have a maze of state laws, with California's CCPA providing some privacy rights but lacking a uniform baseline at the federal level. Automakers have complex privacy policies that most drivers never read, thick legal documents filled with intricate clauses. In this context, it's essential to remember that data routinely transfers for diagnostics, insurance, and even resale through data brokers. Although the Federal Trade Commission is paying attention, actual enforcement is limited and tends to be approached on a case-by-case basis. Two significant pieces of federal legislation aim to give vehicle owners more control: the Driver Act and the ADPA Act. They intend to grant vehicle owners access to their data while also limiting what can be collected without consent. These proposals treat vehicle data as property belonging to the owner, contrasting its current perception as a free resource for manufacturers. As Congress shows urgency in protecting against foreign risks, this same intensity seems absent regarding domestic data pipelines. That's the underlying theme. Vehicles now operate as software-defined products. Whoever controls the software and connections defines the user experience, from features to repairs and accessibility. Blocking foreign competition while maintaining open access domestically not only enhances security, it safeguards existing relationships. This also highlights the irony: continuing reliance on Chinese battery and electronic capabilities while decrying aggressive foreign tech. The selective anger is glaring when linking these points. American automakers have spent years shifting their focus from budget-friendly sedans to higher-margin trucks and SUVs. Those vehicles yield significantly more profit. Introducing genuine price competition from Chinese models would challenge inflated prices in the US. That's precisely what true competition should do, but it's a scenario large corporations prefer to avoid. The United Auto Workers Union has actively supported these measures, knowing that jobs in domestic assembly are more stable when affordable foreign alternatives are restricted. Aftermarket groups support this legislation too, as they find existing supply chains easier to navigate than potential new partners. For consumers, this situation simplifies the equation. They will face continuing elevated vehicle prices without added downward pressure. Currently, the average vehicle transaction price hovers around $50,000. You might not have intended to buy a Chinese brand, but credible and cheaper alternatives compel other manufacturers to justify their pricing. Remove that competitive pressure, and suddenly those justifications become significantly easier to produce. This directly affects your wallet, seen each time you visit a dealership or as the insurance bill arrives. Prices stubbornly remain high even as supply chain issues ease. Insurance rates climb partly because vehicle repairs cost more and partly due to data programs influencing driver risk analyses. When policy decisions limit competition, high prices shift from temporary issues to permanent realities. This ongoing data collection contributes to increased rates, impacting who can afford new, safety-driven vehicles, and how quickly these vehicles enter the market. Families that are already struggling to replace aged cars are the ones most affected. They're also the same families whose data flows through domestic channels without facing scrutiny as it would under foreign conditions. The most we can demand is a consistent level of transparency regarding domestic data collection. The Driver Act and ADPA Act shift attention from how a car is made to who controls the data it generates. The answer should be you, the owner. Advocating for these measures and encouraging discussions in Congress is crucial for managing the data situation. Contact your senators, especially those on the Commerce Committee. Ask them how they plan to reconcile national security with affordability for American families. National security matters, but so do the associated costs. Why should we bear this financial burden? Why is our data at stake? This is a pressing concern. In the meantime, thoroughly explore the total cost of ownership across available options. Consider efficiency, insurance implications, repairability, and whether parts are accessible or locked away. Vehicles that view your data as a revenue stream carry hidden costs, impacting every future transaction you make. The pressing question is often overlooked. We hear how banning Chinese connected technology protects our roads, jobs, and data. However, what if the primary goal is preserving profit margins for existing manufacturers? In the end, American families are left paying the bill every time they buy a car, bearing the cost of technology that benefits only the manufacturers. This is the important conversation we need to have before it's too late. If the ultimate aim is to establish a secure automotive industry, let's do so without the pretense that higher prices are unavoidable and that consumer choice is just a coincidental consequence. I would love to hear your thoughts on this matter. Please share your insights in the comments below.